Nihanyang, hello, I am the Dark Frame. Welcome back to Confessions of a First-Time Dungeon Master. As always, if you missed the last session, I'll put a link for it up in the corner for you over here. You can go check it out, catch up on what you missed, then come back here to find out what happened next. We are now in session 39, so let's begin. Okay, so last we left off, Tyrell has just been possessed by a ghost, and I have never DM'd a possession before, so that was kind of interesting. But essentially, the ghost inside Tyrell takes over his bodies, and so I do have them roll initiative, since that way it gives a little bit more structure and as to like people rolling saving throws or kind of just giving an order as to who gets to try what next, and also kind of keeping it from one person trying like a great many things that maybe would take a little bit longer to do things more kind of in a simultaneous way than kind of like one after the other, but they're actually happening at the same time in world. So roll initiative. The ghost, while in Tyrell's body, is essentially just kind of attacking anybody in reach, and of course when possessed they roll very low. Tyrell does, at least for the attacks against Ivar. So luckily, Ivar takes a couple hits here and there, but nothing terribly serious. There is a bit of sort of panicked, quick decision-making on the part of the party as to what they should do. If they should try to knock Tyrell out, if they should just try to stop him and figure out what to do, if they should try to appeal to the ghost somehow. So with this ghost that has basically manifested from this storybook, my plan for it was basically that the things that they do in like the outside world basically would not really have an effect on the ghost, because the ghost is from the story. Whatever happens in the story basically is what affects what happens in real life. So they would need to like write an answer in the storybook in order to actually get rid of this ghost, with the exception of if they do have an ability or a spell, such as Channel Divinity, Turn Undead, or Protection from Good and Evil, stuff like that. Anything listed in actually the ghost's stat block, to actually expel the ghost from Tyrell. Sometimes I forget that my party, or maybe people in general, don't comb through the monster manual like I do. So these kind of things, metagame-wise, like they don't really know about, although I was a little surprised when our cleric, he's a death cleric, sure, but our cleric was like, I present my holy symbol, and basically like go through the motions of like an exorcism, like begone in like the holy name of Aremsia, goddess of death. And I was like, are you just saying that, or are you putting any magic behind it? Because you do have Channel Divinity, Turn Undead. That is something basically all clerics have, I think. But he's like, no, that's not something that I can do. And in my head I was like, but you're a cleric, you don't know your character as well as you should, because all clerics have turned undead. And that can actually, if I believe they fail their saving throw, they can, they are then kind of expelled, or they will turn and basically run and leave Tyrell's body behind. So eventually Valkyrie casts Hold Person on Tyrell, and her DC I think is like 15 or so, and so Tyrell Wisdom's only +1. He's failing his save, so he stays paralyzed, lucky for the group. And then they go and inspect the book. While the book has not been giving like a turn-by-turn dictation of what has been going on, it has basically continued to write and has said that the ghost kind of moves forward, entering the body of Tyrell, and Tyrell and forces Tyrell to start attacking his companions, and the little ink drawing is kind of reflecting that, with Tyrell kind of like with, I said he has like blank eyes, like the pupils are gone, and he's just kind of swinging at the 4 other figures gathered around him. So the first thing they tried was to draw in little pupils into the ink-possessed Tyrell. However, with the way the book works, drawing does not affect the book. It is the writing that affects the drawing, and then all of that affects reality. So eventually, Umric is the one to write the ghost, something like the ghost comes out of Tyrell and then offers the favor of 5 a riddle or a puzzle in order to pass. And so now I'm like, well, okay, I gotta think of another puzzle on the spot, which is not easy to do. So what I did I do? So basically, I kind of come up with something on the spot relating to what they have kind of already encountered or seen, and I say, I am not of blood, nor am I a monger of fear. I am not a deity, nor am I able to see. Who am I? And this kind of is referring back to the statue puzzle, where there are the different saints in Wistria listed. So the 5 of them are Criella, Saint Criella, Saint Niobe, Saint Lethir, Saint Drea, and Wistria. So I am not of blood, kind of alluding to Criella, being that she is the daughter of Wistria. Nor am I a monger of fear. So this is something they don't know, but Niobe Paul is known as the fearmonger. That's kind of her saint title. And also in the poem, she kind of has been using, she was listed as using fear to great effect. And then I'm not a deity. That refers to Wistria. She is a goddess, not a saint like the others. And then nor am I able to see. Saint Drea, her symbol was a pair of eyes, and so that leaves Saint Lethir Elijah. And so once Valkyrie gives that answer, the ghost kind of nods and says, correct, you may pass. And then she kind of fades into the floor. Likewise in the book, spirit then kind of fades from the pages, and they can continue on. So the next kind of quest is that they come to a large pit ringed by trees. Tied to one of the tree's branches that reach over this pit is a key. And so the key is kind of hanging from a rope across this 30-foot radius pit. They do some clever things where Tyrell kind of like lassos the key, isn't quite able to pull it down, but then Umric kind of fires a crossbow and snaps the rope that is hanging the key to the branch, and they're able to kind of pull it in without much fuss. Once the ink Tyrell kind of picks it up, Tyrell feels it drop into his pocket. They unlock the box and they receive the letters R, V, and A. So now that they have all 9 letters retrieved, they have the letters, let me see if I can remember, R, V, A, Y-U-G-O-U-R. And Umric very quickly puts together that these spell out your grave. So, back to the door with the stone tablet, they enter in the answer. The stone tablet kind of cracks down the middle and then crumbles off of the door, revealing kind of the door seam as well as the 2 handles, indicating they're free to continue. So after some discussion, they decide to go forward. Here was a little bit messy, since like a lot of times my players will kind of just be like, and I do this. And it's just a very sudden, abrupt decision, and it doesn't really allow me to kind of explain what is happening or to put out the information that I need to. So I kind of had to be like, okay, hang on a sec before you all just decide to rush through the door. Valkyrie, because she is holding the key, once she kind of gets close to the door, she notices that the door handles, which previously have no keyhole, no lock or anything like that, a keyhole suddenly appears. And she's like, okay, wait. Now we gotta look at this thing. And our cleric's like, well, I thought I went through the door. It's like, well, I'm kind of retroactively like retconning it a bit so that if she wants to, I'm giving her a chance to stop you. It's like, well, I went through the door. I was like, well, this is what's happening. So, after a little bit of investigation and casting Detect Magic, they decide to try the key. The key goes into the lock, turns, they open the door, and they are back in the foyer. They are a little bit confused as to what this means and why they would be brought back here. So they do a little bit of speculation that maybe this is like a safe place that they can rest after now that they've like cleared it, you know, but then again, there's evidence to the contrary after the statues kind of seem to animate and then attack them. And they are now, the statues actually in the room are now in different places than they remembered when they first stepped in. Valkyrie has the inkling that they will have to kind of come back to the foyer and have to go through all of the fights with the different effigies, which, I mean, is up to them. I don't want to reveal too much about the mechanics of the tower, but they may find out more information later about why this key that they were presented would lead them back here. But that would be for maybe a later confessions. So they decide to go back to the library, and actually, before moving on, take a long rest, as Tyrell, Basil, and Ivar have not yet taken a long rest inside of this tower. So they decide to kind of hole up in the librarian's study, which seems to be kind of the safest, most kind of blocked off area. It's kind of a good thing, good and bad thing maybe that they did, because other things are happening in the tower as they rest. So they let nothing much happens during their rest. They don't roll high enough perception to really notice anything that goes on outside of the room, given that the door is closed and things in the tower are pretty adept at moving silently. So, yeah. But eventually, the elves did try to take another long rest, but I found out it's a rule that you cannot benefit from more than one long rest in a day, or like a 24-hour period. So that's a thing. But I'm nice. I let them take their long rest, and now, refreshed, they decide to continue on, this time without using the special key. So now, once they open the doors, they find themselves in a bustling kitchen. And I'll put a map of it here. The top portion was hidden at first, and so my party does this interesting thing sometimes where they where their characters kind of want to rush through something or like kind of just move through in a hurry, you know, to try and avoid confrontation, try and avoid suspicion, that kind of thing. It's interesting. I mean, it's effective, I suppose. It's also just a little bit awkward in the D&D sense, at least for me, because I guess I have to get better than at reacting in real time to this. But they try to push forward with the zombie librarian at the front. So in these kitchens, there are kind of a set of double doors near the back of the room, and then like kind of off the map there are like a series of dumbwaiters and all of these cooks and chefs who are all like in various kind of anthropomorphic animal forms. The head chef seems to be this kind of pig humanoid with like a dirty apron manning this like large cauldron that's filled with some kind of bubbling stew or soup. And then there are like wolves, kind of like orcish or like warthog kind of looking creatures, like weaselly kind of chefs that are all kind of frantically either prepping food or running around and like delivering food into these dumbwaiters and like sending it up, down, back, etc. So they try and push through, but although this is a very kind of crowded, bustling space, they kind of have no choice but to approach the head chef, Chef Pogren. And Pogren, standing where he is, notices the librarian, whose name I decided was Anelda, kind of right away. And he talks in the very, like, Cockney, like, Englishy, like, broken accent. So he's like, Lady Anelda, what are you doing down here at the library? Kind of like that. They're like, nope, we're just gonna go straight through. He's like, oh, hold on there. He's like, you're not usually out, and you know that you can't go through the door. It's dangerous, and you're not supposed to be here. Stuff like that. So eventually they slow down and are like, oh, what are you talking about? Like, what's behind the door? And I'm not going to do the accent anyway, and Pogren basically explains that they are keeping the tower fed, and their role, one of their jobs, is to keep the master, or Kane's pets, fed. So they kind of have set aside a large amount of, like, food. Most of it is kind of rotten and gross and, like, not fresh, like, you would not want to eat here. They have a large amount of food that's been prepped and set aside to deliver to this pet, which is presumably through the double doors. However, it being mealtime right now, since it is now the morning, they are kind of scrambling to deliver food to, like, the rest of the tower. So the group is like, okay, well, if we don't, like, have a fight on our hands, we're happy to, like, help for a little bit and keep this thing fed. So now we get kind of into the skill challenge portion of things. Basically, for a few of them, they can either help prep food, or mostly the main goal of this is to transport food from the kitchen to whatever is in the back room. So, and these dishes are, like, very, very large, very heavy. And so I'm mostly asking for, like, athletics checks, some dexterity checks to kind of help with chopping, etc. And they do okay. They do kind of roll a bit low on the athletics. My DC that I was looking for was, like, 15. Rolled a bit lower than that. So basically what they see when they emerge through the double doors is kind of this roughly circular kind of stone room. And in the middle of it, there is, like, about a 30-foot radius, 30-foot by 30-foot kind of pit with a 5-foot kind of stone bridge bisecting it. And it's safe to assume that these pets are somewhere down there. So originally, they would have had a few rounds as, like, the things start to rise out of there, but because they attacked and killed the librarian, the master has riled up his pets a little bit, and so now they have only a round or two. So with an initial kind of failure to bring the food, they've kind of already risen pretty high. So as they kind of start rising, they can start kind of hearing this, like, whisper of voices. Umric, after kind of helping in the kitchen, starts to also help out with bringing food, but he's one person. It's hard for him to really bring out enough to satiate this thing, and he didn't roll very well. So now, he looks in the pit, because he does have 60 feet of dark vision, and he sees this kind of fleshy surface with eyes that kind of bubble up and appear, and these mouths, like, full of teeth that kind of open, and you have different voices whispering before they're kind of folded back into this, like, weird fleshy beast, and then mouths kind of emerging again. This is essentially a gibbering mouther, which is probably one of my favorite monsters in D&D. I don't know why. Not the favorite, but one of them. I think they're really cool. And they are basically rising. it eventually gets to the point where the whispers are so loud that the characters are all affected by the gibbering or gibbering? I think it's gibbering. Madness, and they start having to roll. Luckily, they save from that, so that doesn't like auto fail checks because they're not getting enough food in like the different rounds. But eventually the things start to rise, and kind of these like fleshy kind of tendrils covered in eyes and teeth and mouths kind of start to reach over the edge of the pit, and they crawl out. And these are the tokens that I chose for them. Umri kind of runs back to the kitchen and yells, "They're coming out, like friend or foe." And Pokemon, she's like, "They're not friends, they're gonna eat you, aren't they?" And so then we roll initiative, and they've got to fight these two Gibbering Mouthers. So a lot of rolls have to happen with Gibbering Mouthers, because at the top of their turn, if they're within 20 feet and can hear them, they have to roll for the kind of madness or confusion aspect of it. And then if they're standing within 10 feet of them, they have to roll strength save to kind of find their footing and keep from having their speed reduced to 0, since one of these effects is that the area around them kind of becomes this dough-like terrain that's difficult and hard to find your footing in. So we actually ended the session kind of in the middle of combat. Some people were blinded, some people are now prone. This thing bites a lot. It's not dicey yet. It's not meant to be dicey, but the threat of these things is pretty dependent on how well they roll saves and whether or not anyone jumps into the pit. So we will see how that goes next time. I'm curious to find out what happens next, so I hope you are too. So thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe for notifications when I put out new videos. Love you all, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.